Hello everyone, my name is Diska and I'm going to go over some strategies that you can employ while playing Battle Royale in Call of Duty Mobile. These are widely applicable strategies that can be used in solo, duo, or squad mode. In case you're wondering, my current rank is Master 2 in Season 3. So, with the introduction of this out of the way, let's go into talking about some strategies for success in Battle Royale. All right, first thing I want to talk about might seem obvious, but it's actually the most important thing you can do to ensure victory, and that's choosing a well-rounded, experienced team that works well together. So, you want to make sure that everyone you play with has a mic. Communication is crucial for solving problems that arise on the battlefield and coordinating with everyone on your team. So, if you are serious about winning, having good communication is essential. Another thing you want to keep in mind is you really want to avoid playing with random people. Okay, when you play with random players, you get random results. Sometimes they don't even speak the same language as you. It's much better to play with like 10 or 20 players from your friends list that you have played with before and that you trust. All right. Avoid players who get vocally frustrated or lash out at other members of your team or otherwise display immature behavior. These people will destroy unit cohesion, clog the lines of communication with their whining, and distract the team from achieving their goals within the game. You also want to avoid people that are, lone wolves, Rambo type of players that just kind of go off on their own and not work with the team at all. They're not going to be an asset. In fact, they're probably going to be a liability because they'll die and someone will try to go retrieve their tags on their own, and your team will just get picked off one by one. All right, let's talk about the landing. That's probably the second most important thing you can do in the game. As a general rule, you don't want to land at the beginning of the flight path. You also don't want to land in an area super close to the flight path. The reason is not most of the players are impatient and will jump within the first 5 seconds of the flight and land at whatever spot is the closest to them. So, by doing the opposite of that, you are able to avoid the majority of the players early in the round, which is very important for uh, the overall game strategy here. Good spots to land are typically Dock, Countdown, Nuclear Plant, and Sakura. I would suggest avoiding Crash, Farm, and especially Launch Base, primarily because these are hot areas and you are more likely to encounter multiple teams there early in the game. And if that happens, and you fight them, you might win, but you also might die. And if you die early in the game, you're going to lose a ton of points. So it's really not worth the risk because you were rewarded for surviving over time in Call of Duty Battle Royale rather than just the kills that you get. You don't get many points for kills. So, with that said, sometimes, though, despite your best efforts, you will land in the same spot as another team. When this happens, you basically have two options. You can fight or you can retreat. Which one you choose should depend on how skilled your team is. If everyone on your team is a killer and you can, try to hunt down the other team, um, but this is always a gamble, no matter how skilled you guys are. The reason being that the enemy could have found a level 3 armor vest and an AR, and all you have is a Chickum and no vest. So, I mean, you don't know what kind of gear they have, how skilled the enemy players are, or even where they are on the map. Um, so, because there are so many variables working against you in this scenario, the safest thing to do is to retreat quietly to the outskirts of the city that you landed in and loot the smaller buildings on the periphery. This really isn't as bad as it sounds, and once the bots spawn and start charging you, you will all acquire everything you need. Remember, you win by staying alive over time, not getting kills. Knowing when to fight is just as important as knowing how to fight. So once everyone has basic gear, you can make your way to either another region to loot some more or take up a defensive position on a mountaintop or some other prominent geographical feature that will give you cover, concealment, and a good view of your surroundings. This leads us to the next segment, which is mid-game strategy. So, for a mid-game strategy, now that you are all geared up and you have like a basic loadout, now you have a few options. You can either lay low and avoid enemy contact, go to an upgrade terminal, go to an airdrop, or hunt down the enemy. I would highly recommend going to an upgrade terminal. This is usually worth the risk because there are so many of them throughout the map. The chance of encountering an enemy there is relatively low. With that said, it's still a good idea to upgrade quickly and leave the terminal as soon as possible. Don't linger and don't divert off. If someone on your team starts to wander away, say something to them so that it doesn't turn into a situation. Because if you get ambushed and you're all spread out, that's all bad. As far as airdrops go, unless you have a helicopter, I wouldn't suggest chasing down an airdrop across the map because by the time you get there, it will likely be looted or another team will show up while you are looting. Try to always weigh the pros and cons of each decision that you make in the game. If everyone on your team is pretty geared up, going to an airdrop that you suspect will be hot is not really a good idea. You just have more to lose in that situation than you have to gain. You might gain like 1 or 2 level 3 vests, maybe an exotic Arctic or something like that. But if you encounter 1 or 2 teams there that got there before you and already have that stuff, it's not going to be good for you. So always weigh those options. If the airdrop lands close to you, however, there is always a good chance that you'll get there before anyone else, so it's worth the risk. All right, once your team has been to the upgrade terminal and are finished with looting, now you're basically just killing time and waiting for people to die off. Your main goal now is to hide and avoid enemy contact until there are 10 players left. By doing this, by the time you have to fight another team, you're already in the top 10, and even if it goes catastrophically wrong and you all die, you'll at least make the top 10 and not lose any points. So that's very important. That's kind of the underlying premise of this entire game strategy. It's not about getting kills. It's not about being hyper aggressive. I know that's fun, but it's not always the smart thing to do if you're trying to get points and rank up. So let's talk about hiding. All right. Good places to hide mid-game are in areas on the edge of the zone. Try to be as close to the edge as possible, like literally 10 feet, if that's possible. You are less likely to encounter enemy players there, and if there are any, you know that they can only approach from 3 sides because the zone is to your back. Always try to take the high ground and choose somewhere where the terrain allows you to funnel enemy movement so you can limit their avenues of approach and ambush them if they attempt to attack. All right, so for example, okay, you're at the top of a mountain, okay, and there's a bunch of boulders, right, that kind of block 2 sides and kind of creates, a path, excuse me, a path of least resistance, kind of like a road, like a natural road that the enemy will more than likely use to go to the top of the hill to attack you. This is what you want, all right? Because now their most likely avenue of approach, and you can plan around that. Okay, you can ambush them. You know where to look. When you're just scanning. So it's very important to pick a spot like that. Where you're not exposed on 4 sides. That's very important. So if no terrain feature is available, you can also take a hard point, such as the second floor of a building or a rooftop. The point is to find a defendable position on the edge of the zone that offers cover and concealment. So while you're hiding, obviously the zone is going to shrink. So when you have 1 minute before the zone shrinks, start planning the next place you want to hide. Do that early. Keep repeating the strategy for as long as you can, ideally until the second to last circle. All right, so you just keep doing this over and over, following the zone. It's pretty simple, really. And while this is happening, bots will charge you. They'll spawn and charge you, and you guys will be able to get loot and adrenaline and all that stuff. And there might be an off chance that a team will stumble upon you and you'll fight them, but more than likely, you guys will be on your own, which is what you want. So real quick. Before we talk about final circle strategies, I just want to talk about a situation that happens fairly often and can make or break, the game. when it does. And that's what to do if you are the last one alive on your team, okay? So let's say, for instance, you land in an area and another team lands with you, and rather than retreat, like I suggest, you decide to fight, all right? And let's say that the enemy has the upper hand and they kill all of your teammates and you're the only one left. At this point, what you decide is going to, decide whether you guys are going to, win or lose, within the next 30 seconds. So it's very important to weigh all your options here. All right. First thing you want to do is talk to your teammates and ask them how many enemies are there and where they are in relation to their tags. Okay. This is going to allow you to visualize in your head the situation that is unfolding if you aren't able to physically see it. All right. So once you do that, you want to look at where the tags are on your map. Okay. If they're in the open and there's no cover, and you suspect that the enemy is hiding in a building or some other covered area out of sight, waiting for you, ready to ambush you when you get the tags, which is likely the case. You want to consider using a vehicle, such as like a motorcycle or a helicopter, something fast and maneuverable to get the tags. All right, so that way you're in and out. You're not just running around. You have some level of protection. That's really the best way to go. If you're in an area that's too hot, sometimes you have no choice but to abandon the tag. So like if you you weighed all your options, you looked around, there's no vehicle, you tried to go maybe and you're taking lots of enemy fire and from different angles and different positions, and it's basically 4-on-1. That's not a winning scenario, okay? I don't care how good you are, the chance of you getting out of that, especially if they have the high ground, especially if they have, the second floor of a building or some sort of, elevated position with cover, it's very low. So at this point, you need to just retreat. Sometimes the best thing to do is to just walk away from it. And I know that sucks and it might piss some people off, but the more experienced players will understand and they'll appreciate it, because you're not going to just walk into a very bad situation and cost everyone a lot of points. All right. So basically, once you make that choice to abandon the tags and retreat, your primary objective now is just to stay alive for as long as possible. All right. That way, the entire team can get points. So try to get into at least the top 10, or the top 5 is preferred. The top 10 at lower tiers will still give you a decent amount of points. At higher tiers, it will, you'll basically break even. You might get a few points depending on how many kills you get, but try to shoot for that top 5, And, basically now, if you do find yourself in that position, just employ all of the tactics and strategies that I just previously discussed. Hide on the edge of the zone. All right. Avoid enemy contact. Don't take fights that are going to put you at a disadvantage. Only attack people when they're basically stepping on you. Just repeat the strategies that we've already gone over, and you'll be good to go.